Hello and welcome into another edition of the Raptors Republic post-game show. The Raptors just had a very nice win, bounce back win, you could say, against the Milwaukee Bucks in Milwaukee in their first set of a back-to-back against the Bucks. OG was. Let's start there. OG was at first doubtful, and then all of a sudden he came in and bumped up to questionable, and then he started in a small ball lineup. So I think let's start here. Is OG really just this important to the Raptors that maybe we underestimated it in the last few losses?
Uh, I don't know if one game will tell you anything about how important a player is in any situation, but it certainly allowed the Raptors to go small against Milwaukee, which really worked out for them because for various reasons we'll get into. But yeah, OG's defense on Middleton in key stretches in this game and his early outside shooting and just his general the Raptors' ability to just switch on the perimeter when they needed to, even on that last possession. Or I'll play that clip in a bit where they're able to just switch. Like he's guarding Giannis, and then a screen is set, and now he's on Middleton. It allows that switchability, which is so important, which they really can't do without him. So I think he's very important. Is he the most important Raptor? Probably not, but certainly in this matchup, he adds a dimension which the Raptors did not have. And man, just even some of his offense, like we'll talk about his defense a little bit, but his offense is just, the turnaround jumper that he hit late in that fourth quarter, his spin move, the snake dribble thing he did, and he hit it off the glass. So if you look at his overall contribution, without him, we don't win this game. So it's fantastic to see him come alive. It's unfortunate that I left him on the bench on my fantasy team. I didn't think he would play today.
Yeah, not much you can do. I always go for those safe, don't play the guys who are questionable decisions
Yeah.
because rarely do they actually come back when they say they will. But yeah, like it was really nice definitely to just watch him. The Raptors make so much more sense with him in the lineup. I've talked about before why I think the team's identity, as in if they want to win, is small for sure. Like it's it's partly because for sure we don't have like that elite center, but I think even if we had like a replacement level center, the identity would still be to close games small. Like it's not something you ideally want to do to start games or play really long stretches, but it's something you definitely want to have in your pocket if you're this team and kind of depend upon late when the games really matter, because you touched on it. The difference between Powell at the three and OG at the three is so significant because it means that Pascal and OG, who will usually take the two best wings on the team, can switch every single time there's a screen. And that just screws up so many teams' plans because they're not used to it. Like a lot of teams just aren't used to that much switchability that the Raptors provide.
And,
We'll also
and I'll
get into that
say,
scram switch.
just to build on that, I mean, we should also say that Aaron Baines had a very good game. Like he had a productive game on both ends of the floor. And how often have we said that? Right? So as much as it is about OG, it's also about getting some good production out of the center position, both by Boucher, who was spreading the floor, and Baines, who was defending. Like he had some like impressive defensive sequences where he, picked up a charge, got a block, got into position a couple times. So if you look at the combination of all three, OG coming back, Boucher hitting threes, Baines having a good game, I think all the confluence of all three allowed the Raptors to win this, not necessarily just one individual's brilliance.
I agree, but I think that one person coming back to the lineup shifted everything else. So, like, let's talk about a bit about the bigs. And, like, this is something I probably disagree a bit with Sahal on, where he throws shade on Baines. But, like, as I've said, Baines is a serviceable, like, NBA big. He's just not a starting level big at this point. But you saw against, like, backup bench groups, Baines playing really well, especially defensively. And the really nice thing about Boucher, and you could say the exact same thing about Ibaka, and I think it's one of the more underrated. I mean, I talk about it plenty, but underrated things in the modern NBA is just flexibility. And the nice thing about Boucher is that he can play the four. It's actually his position, but I should say he can play the five too. So the fact that he can play with Baines or alone, that that's just a nice look. Like I thought the bench look with both of them out there looked good, right?
I think just when this game started and you saw Siakam versus Boucher, like it just and you saw that their game plan was to give Siakam space to shoot. And
Siakam versus who? You said Boucher.
sorry, Siakam versus not Boucher. I mean Lopez, Brook Lopez.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
When you saw those two matched up, and you're like, man, is Siakam going to settle for the jumper a little too much here? Because Lopez was giving him plenty of space all game. And I want to call out Siakam because, number one, he had a very good defensive game overall. Like from minute 1 to minute 48, I thought he made the right decisions on defense throughout this game. But second, he also did not play into the Bucks plan where we give him space and he becomes strictly a 3-point shooter. So he avoided that, and instead he navigated the offense really well. Got into the block a couple times, hit his set shot threes, which is what he needs to do. Like he doesn't need to be like fadeaway three, jacking up, pulling up in transition. That nonsense nobody needs. But as a set shot shooter, catching the ball off of a pass from somebody else with his feet set, I think he hit at least two or three threes from that configuration. So you're absolutely right. I think the switchability of the Raptors players and when they're hitting shots, makes them unstoppable at times. And when you have intelligent, smart, consistent play coming out of Siakam, it just makes it that much more difficult. And I hope that this game kind of shows us that Siakam doesn't necessarily need to have a 35 point, 12 rebound, 8 assist game to have a star like game. Like to me, this was an excellent Siakam game, which if he replicates every single night, I think we're going to have a lot of success.
Yeah, and I think he can, no doubt. Like you said, his approach was really good. You saw like a lot of like shots he usually makes just rimming out, but the way he was getting them was really good. Like he was getting to his space almost every time, and that's what you want to see from him. Like Lopez giving him that much space, sometimes I want to scream at my TV and be like, shoot it, but he did a really good job just attacking a slow-footed big. Before we get into like individual players, I think we should touch on like the more like kind of overall I guess just one theme of the game here, which is like rebounding. And I'll ask you first and then I'll give my thoughts on it. But the Raptors had 3 more rebounds than the Bucks. You just talked about Siakam. He had 5 offensive rebounds. But why, like, how did that happen? When they played so small, how did they out rebound such a big team?
I think if you look at the rebounding numbers in this game, they're a little skewed. I think the Raptors had a pretty significant advantage at halftime in rebounding, and in the second half, they actually lost the rebounding battle overall. So the stats don't really tell a consistent story of board domination. I don't really know how to answer that question. I think it was a combination of just a lot of long rebounds coming to the Raptors. And the Raptors also not just relying on Boucher and Baines to get the board. So I think it's a bit of a combination. What do you think? Do you have a theory here?
I don't have a theory so much as like my theory is just that they played really focused and they hit bodies every time the ball went up and boxed out. And yeah, everyone contributed, especially having OG back is nice too. He's a good rebounder. But more than a theory, I think like when they are rebounding, okay, when the Raptors are getting in transition as well as they did in the first half, which may be why those numbers are skewed. I thought the Raptors got it out in transition so well in the first half that the Bucks just completely stopped crashing the offensive boards. And that's another way that these small ball lineups can survive. It's when the other team has in the back of their mind, these guys are going to run on us constantly. That's when they're going to stop going for like using their size to their advantage by going for offensive rebounds. And they're going to be stuck backpedaling because they're just too scared that the transition offense can burn them.
I like your point on transition. It reminded me of like the wall that the Raptors play with whenever Giannis has the ball, because Giannis is really their main kind of like one man fast break threat, where it doesn't even matter if it's fast break or not. He just pushes it so hard up the court that you're forced to kind of collapse on him. And and going back to the OG point is that having OG out there as the second guy who might come over to help on Giannis just changes the game a little bit, because it allows us to play that wall that Nurse introduced in the playoff series a couple of years ago to stop Giannis. So I think the way we stop them in transition is not necessarily by preventing them from going in transition, but it's also once they get into the nail area, that's when we send help, and and with OG we're able to recover very, very quickly, far more so than any other defender on the court. So that switch to help and then recoverability is just accentuated with OG so much that it just impacts everything.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, especially the difference between OG and Baines, who would normally start at the five. That difference in the ability to help and then close out is pretty significant for the way this team wants to play. Quick note on Giannis. I mean, let's just talk about him real quick, because he's been like out of all the MVP talks this year, and I think for good enough reason. Whatever, the MVP is just ridiculous award the way it's voted on, but he is just so good. I mean, even OG can't stop him. And what impressed me a lot today, and this has been a gradual progression for him, is his passing. And that's like, I think of Siakam as like a poor man's Giannis, no disrespect. Very similar games, I think, but obviously not as good. And like, that's his next step is passing on the move. Like, Siakam's really getting better at passing out of that post. He can pass a little bit out of that pick and roll, but passing like in transition on the move, that's one thing Giannis is just super, super good at. Like, he'll like surprise you with these like whip like through a couple guys' hands, like right into the guy in the dunker spot who goes up. And it's just like, how are you 7 foot and making those passes?
And he's making passes to the weak side, like the other side of the court now. So if he's driving to the right, he's able to find guys on the other side. Connaughton got a couple of threes that way here too. So it's a combination of like accuracy and also range. And he doesn't need to be in great passing position to make a great pass anymore. Like, he's able to kind of like just muster it up and get it out there. Yeah, I mean, as I was watching that first half and saw him go off, I was just like, man, imagine this guy on the Raptors. Like, goddamn, man. Like, goddamn.
I don't know. I have such a bad habit of every time I watch him, even not play the Raptors, just in general, I'm just like, be our small ball five. Like, that lineup gives me like fantasies, you know? But anyways, alas.
What did you think of Van Vliet? I mean, I thought he pretty much controlled the game, especially in the second half. That late third, fourth stint he had, mostly in the third quarter. I think the Raptors looked a little. The game might get out of the way. You know, they got punched a couple times, but Van Vliet really, with Baines especially, ran a few plays with Baines. Baines got the and one on one of them. He hit a couple of threes on his own. He shook Giannis, which I will play just momentarily. Overall, I thought Van Vliet was just the floor general that we expect him to be.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like we've seen it before in games where Kyle hasn't played is where Fred kind of takes a step up. Just like, I think he's comfortable when he knows the ball is going to be in his hands a lot, and he kind of has more freedom to kind of like do more, just both as a passer and a scorer. And yeah, it was probably his best game of the season. I mean, like, I wrote the preview for Raptors Republic today, and I obviously touched on like the Bucks drop defense is kind of tailor made for a guy like Van Vliet. And I think the difference we saw today is the mid range, first of all, because he'd always attack the drop as a 3-point shooter, but 3-point shots are just high variable and like they're not always going to go down. But today he had it in the mid range too. So he could kind of attack both of those angles and kind of get to wherever he wanted on the floor, because it's hard to guard him out there and also for the mid-range shot and also at the rim. And like, he did a pretty good job. I don't know if he scored at the rim very much, but he did a really good job drawing contact. And that is what you need from Van Vliet. I mean, like, from a developmental standpoint, it's amazing that the mid-range and the foul drawing are both taking significant jumps this season when those were the two weakest. I mean, the rim finishing is still an area he needs to improve on, but those were two of his three weakest areas, and he's really improved both of them along with the playmaking.
I think I've said it a few times this season. I've had no complaints with Van Vliet's game whatsoever since game one of the season. And yeah, he goes through some stretches where he gets a little turnover prone. Like in the second quarter, he did that a couple times. But that's him just trying to create when the offense is a little bit a little stagnant. And defensively, I thought he was really good too, because a lot of the steals and the turnovers the Raptors generated, you may not credit him with the steal, but him and Norm as well. I mean, I think everybody had a pretty decent defensive game. The amount of pressure they supply make the pass difficult to make, especially when they collapse in that elbow area against whoever picks up the dribble. The Raptors did a lot of that today. Anytime you went to the elbow area and you were hesitant or you picked up your dribble, they collapsed on that person immediately. And Van Vliet, given that he's a guard, he's usually closer to those areas, so he was very aware of when to dribble. Because if you dribble too early, you make the pass to your man easier because, well, the guy's not under pressure. But if you double at the right time, then you make the pass even more difficult. And I thought the Raptors got the timing of their double teams really like spot on tonight, especially Siakam. Again, we got to talk about Siakam, man, because this dude, he was on point on defense all game long.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like honestly, I've liked him as like a help at rim defender all season. I mean, he's not the perfect guy to be there. He's like 6'9". He's not a 7-footer and whatever, but he is pretty smart positionally. And I guess the biggest thing is that he's quick. Like he can close out and then get back to the rim, or he can go help and then get back to his man really quickly. I want to go back. I want to go back to Van Vliet before we finish up. First of all, on Powell, him and Middleton have like a little beef going. It's fun to watch. They always guard each other, and it just seems like they get under each other's skin. It's a good matchup. On Van Vliet, I think it's super like I just feel like we should come back to it because like it can't. Yeah, it's one game, but this has been a progression for him against the Bucks. Like looking back, compare this to the Celtics, okay? Two teams that are both really big on the perimeter. I mean, Milwaukee has some small guys too, like a Bryn Forbes or whatever, but when Drew Holiday's in there, really big on the perimeter. But why does Fred succeed against Milwaukee but not Boston? Well, like in my opinion, I guess there's two things I see. One is that Fred loves attacking bigs off the dribble, and like Brook is really good to do that. Whereas Boston centers, like especially Tice, is much more nimble. He can defend out there at the perimeter a little bit. And yeah, the Bucks have a couple guys who really can't. And then the other thing is that the Bucks, and this is something they get killed for, is like they they just drop. They don't do anything else. And maybe they just need to introduce, okay, we drop against everyone else, but if Fred VanVleet is in the pick and roll, we're not going to drop. Like, I don't know why they don't introduce more complex schemes, because this is a team that's been together for years. But the Celtics, they show their bigs at wherever the screen is. They show their bigs at the line. And Fred has a really hard time like getting over those screens and then heading downhill quick enough or whatever. But I say that
Also gets worn
because,
down defensively more against Boston than he does
yeah,
against Milwaukee, because
good point.
Boston makes it a point to exploit him in the block. The Bucks don't really look to exploit his height because Middleton mostly plays a face-up game for the most part. I mean, I don't think he even had even one or two post-ups in this game. So that's got to take a physical toll on Fred when he has Tatum in the block, and Tatum's like almost playing like a Gasol type role where he's scanning for cutters and all that. Middleton doesn't really do that, so Fred gets let off the hook there a little.
Yeah, for sure. And Middleton was quiet tonight. But I say all that because this is like a potential playoff matchup. And to have like one of your peripheral guys, Fred VanVleet, like he's not your best player. He's not even your second best player if all things are going well. To have a guy like that dictate a matchup, and like either just destroy the Bucks in the drop or make them play differently because of him, that's just huge in terms of like how we match up against them going forward, because this is a team that's going to be an Eastern Conference competitor for years with Giannis there. So it's not just this season, but yeah, I say that just because Fred has really figured them out. Like it's been a progression. It's not just this game, and he's figured out that drop and he's killing them. Yeah, let's move on. um, oh yeah, you played that the
Oh
Giannis
yeah, I
clip
mean,
of Fred going at
I think we
Giannis.
can play it again, and I don't think anybody will mind if we just play that clip, just a couple more times, maybe. Here we go, here we go.
Yeah.
Let's just watch it together, because when, yeah, he just shakes him a little. He seeks the switch on him first, and then Giannis just wants to avoid pick him a foul, and then he has the little a little floater, a little extra air in it. You know what I mean? Just a feather teardrop, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it, behind the back, all that, everything. This move has pretty much everything on it.
Yeah, it was pretty.
Oh,
Um, do you think
oh,
this starting lineup is gonna be the one going forward? Because like when you look at it, the Bucks are a big team, so it didn't feel very matchup dependent,
yeah.
although maybe it was in some way. Do you think that this is just the starting lineup and Baines is now coming off the bench to play with Boucher?
Yeah, I mean, starting lineups are always like matchup dependent for me, but I don't see why this wouldn't be used more heavily. Because if you look at the end of the game, Bain still played like 17 minutes. Boucher had like 30 minutes, so it's not like you really changed your overall playing time structure of the roster. You just threw a different look at the start. And against the Bucks, I think it was a conscious decision to kind of give Siakam a little bit more driving space against his matchup. So kudos to Nurse for making this change on the fly. I think all we know from this game is that we have more options on how to play. I don't think we've necessarily tried kind of OG at the five or whatever, Siakam at the five, before in such an extended period. So it's great to have another option in your arsenal. That's how I see it. I've never been too hung up on who starts, who finishes type. I mean, who starts type deal. So I'm just glad to see that we have this ability to throw this lineup out there, and it can cause teams some issues.
Yeah, and so I saw a tweet before the game. Apologize for forgetting who tweeted it, but that lineup had only played 29 minutes this season, and they had a net rating of 4.8 with a defensive rating of 82, which is ridiculous defensively. So the thing I like about starting that lineup too, and this is something Blake has kind of pointed out on Twitter, is that when you start Baines and bring Boucher off the bench in that like heavy minutes role, sometimes you catch him playing the entirety of the fourth quarter. And you're like, oh, that's definitely not ideal, right? And so I think when Boucher can play with Baines a little bit, you have an easier time playing them together, playing them separate, so that Boucher can kind of get a couple of minutes of rest before if you're going to close the game out with him. Because I also want to touch on that lineup. What in the first half it was Kyle minus Fred and Boucher, and then in the second half there was in the third quarter a stretch where Fred played with Boucher instead of Kyle, and I really like that lineup for stretches because it's huge, right? Norm at the two, OG Siakam and Boucher. It's so big. Everyone's a shooter. Everyone, you know, it's just a really nice lineup that we haven't gotten to see that much this season because, OG's been out.
Given that Fred, as you said earlier, like he's working on his passing still, and he's working on becoming like a legit one, right? I mean, because he's traditionally been a quote unquote two guard. So the more shooting options you give Fred on the floor, like with any point guard, really, the more effective he'll be. So when you have OG, Siakam, and Boucher on there, and throw in Norm as well, you really have 4 3-point shooters out there, right? Or three-point shooters, and maybe I don't know if Baines was playing or not, but it just gives him more option, and he's able to use more areas of the court. Because if he only has like, if he knows the shooter is on one side, he will try to kind of magnet towards that and try to play in that area of the court because he knows the pass is easier. But because you have more shooters, I think Fred becomes more willing to explore other areas of the court. So just by having that court balance of shooters, you kind of influence the way Fred runs the offense. And that's why, because he had more space to work with today, I think that's why he was able to control the game better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the Minnesota game, the Raptors, the Fred plus bench lineup got killed in the end of the third. And a lot of people pointed out that that's really why they lost that game. And I agree, but don't go blaming Fred for not being able to plop up Bembry, Boucher, Terrence Davis, and Stanley Johnson. Like that's maybe Kyle can, but nobody. It's Kyle and Chris Paul. That's it. Like don't expect that from Fred. That's a coaching mistake, really, to expect him to prop up these really weak offensive lineups. He's much better suited to play in the one we just talked about.
What did you make of the? I know this is not directly but the flagrant fouls. Like what did you make of those? Do you understand them?
Which ones
I mean
are you
both. I
thinking
mean
of?
the first one was on the one they gave on Fred, which was the with
Oh,
the
the
elbow,
elbow.
right?
Yeah.
And then Giannis got fouled on the other end, and they didn't give that. And to me, it was really confusing because you're almost peeking into the player's head at this point and
Oh,
gauging intent based on nothing. Like,
right.
like
The
to me, they're
idea of
both
intent
common
is
foul. Either they're both flagrants or they're both common fouls. I
okay.
think there
Yeah,
should be common fouls.
I don't remember who hit Giannis on that one, so I don't remember what it looked like. But the Fred one, I agree. I thought it should have just been a common foul. He did stick out his elbow, but yeah, I agree. Like you can't like act like if it was on purpose or not. You know. Um, yeah, I think
I'm playing that clip right now. Let's just see here. I think Bembry. It was Bembry. Yeah, whatever. It's annoying. Sorry, it's not a big point of the game. It just annoys me when I see that.
Yeah, before we go, do you have anything you're looking for? Because these two teams are playing again on Thursday, which is always kind of fun it's very playoff vibes, which is obviously everyone likes the playoffs, and that's a big reason you kind of get to watch in series matchups.
Yeah.
So is there anything you're looking on either team to do?
Yeah, I'm looking at the Bucks maybe trying to go to Middleton more. I don't think they really milked him at all. They primarily ran their almost everything through Giannis for the most part. And I think Middleton was. If I'm a Bucks fan and I look at Middleton's stat line for this one, like only 8 shots.
Wow.
Like that's got to be disappointing because that he's capable of more. He's able to shoot over his opposition. So I'd say they're gonna go to him a little bit more. And Middleton also has a bit of a post up game, so I wouldn't be surprised if when their transition game slows down a little, or the Raptors cut their transition game off, they go into a more half court setup a little bit more comfortably, rather than, oh my God, we got to play half court basketball now.
Yeah,
How about
this
you?
this box score is Nick Nurse's wet dream. I'm just looking at it now. DiVincenzo with 14 shots, Connaughton with 15 shots, Bobby Portis with 11 shots, and Middleton with only 8. Like, that's what the Raptors, they want role players to put up a lot of shots. And yeah, like, um, I guess that was they did well in their aim. I'm looking on the Bucks side to I've heard people in podcasts say that the Bucks are switching up their coverages more, but I haven't seen it. I've watched a few other Bucks games other than this game, and I really just see them dropping. So I'd like to see them try something else, whether it's switching or just showing higher. I don't know. Like I'd like to see them not. I mean, I would like to see Fred kill them again, but I would like to see I'm interested to see if they adjust that, or maybe on the other hand, play Brook less and match Toronto playing small. From Toronto's standpoint, if you can play like that again, I mean, that's what you want.
I think the Bucks value rebounding, and because they value defensive rebounding, you will see them kind of sag back and try to prioritize the defensive rebound more than contest 3-point shots, especially
I think
by
they're also
guys like Siakam.
yeah, I think they're also taking away shots at the rim. That's their
Yeah.
priority.
So here's that play that I want to talk about, that I want to give Siakam a little bit of credit for not taking bad shots, because we talked about Nick Nurse's wet dream. Bud's wet dream here is Siakam taking bad shots, and here he is bringing the ball up the court. And look at Lopez. Lopez is giving him ample distance, and he passes it off, sets a screen, finds himself in a better position, closer to the rim, more comfortable jumper, takes it and drains it. I think a play like that kind of gets lost in the grand scheme of things, but when you kind of watch it after the game, you realize, man, that's a smart decision to not shoot and then reposition into a better area and take that one. So this is the type of maturity that you want to see from your number one guy. So kudos to Siakam, man, overall.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm just looking at the comments now. A lot of people are talking about OG. I don't think we talked about him much. Like defensively, we know he's this good. I'm surprised people are so surprised. I mean, maybe it's been a little while, but yeah, OG is the best defender on this team. It's not that close. I would say like OG showed like he doesn't run much pick and roll at all. And that one play he ran a pick and roll was the spinorama, snake dribble spinorama, or has he dribble spinorama, layup and one. I feel like just like watching Jaylen Brown this season, it's like so impossible to tell how wings are going to develop their on ball skills. And that's why, like with OG, you have some subset of the Raptors fan base being like, he's going to be our best player in 2 years. And like other subsets who are like, he's just a 3-and-D guy. And I think it's like, no one can act like they know because like he's a pretty robotic dribbler. Like Brown was always more of a fluid player, I would say. But I didn't see Brown's leap coming like this significantly in one season. So for me to try to predict where OG is going to go, like from a developmental standpoint as like an on-ball player, a pick and roll player, I think it's just so hard to say. But he's shown flashes that are really encouraging if you're a Raptors fan, especially at his young age.
Does he surprise you? Like I find he's always surprised me in how smooth some of his moves are. Like right now, I'm showing that little turnaround jumper that he had, and even on this play, like when he posted the guy up in the block and he stepped out for a little jumper, like it's casual, it's measured, it's like it's not like he's finding himself in a position where he has to force a shot. This is the shot that he wants to take. It's just that we haven't necessarily seen him be responsible for his own shot creation as much. But whenever he does get the chance, whenever you see him kind of almost get permission to make a one-on-one move, it's never been awkward. We almost expect it to be awkward because we don't see much of it. But when it does happen, it is fairly refined. Like it's not, it's not Fred refined, but it's refined.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. It surprises me in the sense that for how not often he gets to create those opportunities, he seems to be really efficient and create really good looks when he does. One problem he has is like, I think this is related to his dribbling, is that he gets called on these offensive fouls way too often where he's sticking his kind of hand out or his like shoulder out as he goes into a guy. And I think that's just because he's not comfortable like bringing the ball up and going up for it at the same time as making contact, and which is why he makes the wrong kind of contact and gets called for those offensive fouls. But yeah, like he for how kind of robotic, I don't know, like his dribbling looks like he's very Kawhi-esque in that he doesn't look like he should be good with the ball in his hands, but he's starting maybe to be a little bit good with the ball in his hands. And like him being behind so many good players his whole time with the Raptors is that's one of the bad things about playing with such a successful organization is you're not like going to be Patrick Williams on the Bulls just like here go ahead like play, like you do your role and slowly each season it'll build a little bit more. So yeah, OG
I mean,
good.
I think we talked about OG to kind of start, but I do want to show like this play on Middleton, like late on, where he also gets the steal, right? I mean, here this is the switch that I'm talking about. He switches on to Middleton here, and cuts him off a couple times, and then he makes he presents himself in transition to get the easy dunk. Like you talk about 3-and-D, man. Well, there's no three in this one, but at least D and a score. I mean, there's a lot to like about this play, man. Like a lot here. Like I love the initial switch that he had. Let me watch it one more time, just so right there. He's on this guy, makes him pass, goes to Middleton, squeezes him a little bit, you know, prevents the pass back to Middleton, and then he's in the right passing position, so the pass to him is easy, and he gets 2 points, and that kind of sealed the game right there. That's your turning point if you want to do one today.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. Shout out Alex and Melville in the chat. What up, guys? Shout out to our sponsor, Arif Qureshi. Thank you for sponsoring the show. Before we go, Zar, you have any last thoughts?
You wanted to highlight a couple of plays, some scram switching. You wanna get to those?
We can show the scram switch. Sure. We already showed the Fred one,
Yeah,
so I'm
we
not
showed
worried
the
about
spread one.
that.
So here's here's the scram you were talking about. This is from the first half. I'll roll it. Walk us through it, even though you're on a 30-second delay.
Yeah, yeah. It'll show for me in a sec, but I wanted to bring it up because we talked about the exact same thing last game, I think, or maybe 2 games ago when we talked to each other about the Raptors just finding themselves in bad situations with their guard guarding a center in the post. We saw it with Fred VanVleet, I think, on Karl Anthony Towns last game that led to a bucket. And so this is something I said the Celtics do really well. And I don't think it's that hard to pull off. Like you definitely need the communication to be there, but with smart players, you can do this pretty easily. You know, Siakam just comes when he's on the weak side, sees that no pass is coming, and switches Freddie out. And so Fred gets a guard on the perimeter, and Pascal's inside, and so they don't go to Lopez for the post up, and they get a contested three out of it. So a scram switch is just something I think the Raptors should look to do a little bit more when they see, especially Fred, because Kyle's a really good post defender, but either one of them really, or Norm, like with a big man, I just think it makes sense for one of their bigger wings or a center to go and take him out.
Highlight a little different play. This is again the Raptors defense just like being everywhere at the same time. Like Bembry just being on the floor and Boucher just covering the ground they do. Like as you watch this one, man. By the way, Matt Thomas made the cut today. It's just like Bembry and Boucher, the amount of ground they cover overall in the game just makes everything so difficult for any defense, right? And once you get support from even Matt Thomas on this play is like doing his bit to stay with his man. And to me, this is what the Raptors defense need to be in the absence of like excellent big men like Marc Gasol and Ibaka. You need your guards to cover and recover at the same time. So, I saw this one and I paused it and I rewound it a few times during the game. Just excellent, excellent defense. Credit to
Yeah.
Bembry. Like he's on a run, man. Dude's on a run.
But also Boucher, like his stop and start here, like the flip of his waist is so quick that he gets back from the block from to get the block is pretty ridiculous for a guy who plays a lot of five for this team. Uh yeah.
The Bucks broadcast team, who I always watch, and if you have League Pass or if you have some other channel option, always watch the other team's feed because they will always tell you something new. You've heard what Leo and Jack have to say. I've memorized it. There's nothing more to be heard there. But here they are breaking down the hammer screen set here by your man Baines, just freeing up Norm for a critical three here. And this is what I'm talking about, Fred's passing. Like when you have this sort of action accompanying Fred, guess what? Suddenly he can pass to the corners. He can make all these passes because it's not just him finding guys, it's guys opening up space for him. And in this case, it's Baines with that hammer screen, I guess, and Powell gets the clean look. I mean, good stuff overall by the Raptors here, man.
Oh yeah, no, I remember that play. Yeah, and that's probably Baines' biggest benefit to this team is the off-ball screener so far this season, which is one of the things we thought he would bring. We thought he would bring a little bit more, but it's definitely a nice little wrinkle to having him on the floor, and which is it's part of the reason I like him and Boucher so much because Boucher can play more of an off-ball shooting threat or a pick and roll guy, while Baines can kind of set these off-ball screens for other guys. They work together for sure, just like tonight was, I think, the first time those two played together on the floor all season. Because yeah, and just the eye test, I haven't looked at the numbers. The numbers don't matter. It's one game, but the eye test, it said those two work on the floor together as a bench unit because like they're not playing starters too. They only have to beat bench groups.
Hey, pick your super sub of the game for the Raptors. Impact sub. By the way, Mr. Sub, if you want to sponsor the section, go right ahead, man. Super
Mr.
sub.
Sub, are they still they're still thriving in the year 2020?
I
Mr.
think I
Sub.
saw a couple around. I mean, they're not going to be in the chicken sandwich wars, which the Talking
I feel
Raptors
like
guys are
I
on.
feel
But
like someone needs to go on a Subway rant at some point. Like to me, I hope you don't eat Subway, but like, how is Subway still thriving? Like, who still goes to Subway? Their prices just keep going up. This quality is, it's really plateaued and it was never good. Like, there's way better sub shop sandwich places if you want. Like, it's not even cheap enough to be considered like real fast food. Like, if you're going to Subway, you're not doing it right, in my opinion.
No, and it also
Um,
smells in there.
you don't like the smell?
It's,
Yeah,
it's,
I
it's it's
like
got
the
a
smell.
Subway smell. Like every Subway has a particular smell, and it's
Oh, for
not
sure.
appealing.
Subway has good cookies. I'll give him that. Great cookies. Boucher had 5 blocks, so I would say he's my impact sub of the night for sure. Boucher.
I don't have his block, but I will show you a Boucher 3, which which I think, like, I honestly think, I don't think all NBA teams have yet realized who Chris Boucher is. I really think he's still a bit of a secret when we go into opposing arenas. Even though he's been putting up numbers, even though he's got like high in the blocks category, you still see like people leave him alone, like Lopez on this play that I'm playing right now. Like, there's no reason why you would want to leave a 42% 3-point shooter alone to help when there's not even help needed, I believe. Look how far Boucher is here. Nobody's rotating out to him. I honestly think they underestimate what he's capable of, and good for him, man. He's making them pay.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think like in the NBA, it's not really about what you're shooting that season. It's more about like what the mental perception of you is. And since this is Boucher's first season actually shooting the ball really well, teams are still definitely like sagging off the line and kind of letting him shoot. So I think that'll eventually catch up to him. The other point maybe is in Boucher's favor is that if teams run him off the line, he's done a much better job of putting the ball on the floor and attacking closeouts as a passer, especially. So maybe it's a little bit of him too. That's about it for me. I think if the Raptors, if they can keep with this small ball unit specifically, if they can keep punishing teams in the fast break and then rebounding the ball well, I think this group could have a lot of success.
I I agree, and I think today has been a big learning opportunity for all of us. We have a new lineup on our hands. Things are looking bright. Let's see if we can really beat them twice in a row at their place. I think I never want to say like a regular season game matters in the postseason, but the Bucks appear to be a little fragile, man. Like, I don't think they've really gotten over that blowing that 2-0 lead they had a couple of years ago. And I think the Raptors are in their heads. And I think they see us almost, I feel, as a bit of a boogie team they have to overcome. And if the Raptors are able to, win another one here, it might leave a mark in the case we meet in the postseason. Oh my God! I just
Yeah.
checked out the comment section here on what's it? Trade Lowry to
Yeah.
Philly or Miami for Curry, and
People have some
okay, there's a
questions.
lot
I
going
don't
on
know
in
if we
that
want to
trade,
get
man.
into
I
them.
can't comment on that trade.
um, Regarding the Bucks, it does feel like when we play them, there's a little extra there for sure. Like, especially with Giannis, I feel like he's just kind of different when he plays us a little. He has a little thing with Siakam, it's a little, I don't know, mano a mano thing. Um, but yeah, as I, I keep hearing people pick teams like Philly to beat the Bucks in the playoffs. I'm definitely not there. I like the Bucks more than Philly. I like the Bucks and Brooklyn out of the East personally, but they're also missing Drew Holiday, who's become such a huge part of this team and like just such a good like defender for a guy like Fred. Like we didn't say this, but he's good in the drop because he's really good at like chasing guys over screens and like contesting shots from behind. So he won't be back though. So yeah, there's definitely opportunity to take another game.
Do you want to talk a little about Andre Drummond? Your thoughts on the
Oh God.
Drummond rumors, and I know this is the post game show, but like, what are you thinking on that front here, man? Give me
Yeah,
your honest evaluation on Andre Bloody Drummond, man.
sure. So first of all, me and Sahal will definitely be getting into some trade stuff closer to the trade deadline and even in the next couple of weeks. So we will definitely answer some of your trade questions the best we can. In terms of Drummond, because this is a real, I guess, rumor reported by Shams. I think it doesn't make a lot of sense because the money purely like he's such an expensive contract that the only way you get him is you either trade Kyle, which is not happening unless there's a third team involved, or you trade Powell and Baines and two other contracts. And at that point, you're sending out four contracts for one, which is like something that people love to do on ESPN Trade Machine, but something that NBA teams very, very rarely do for a number of reasons on both sides. It's hard to make a 4-for-1 deal work. So for that reason alone, I don't see it really working. There's also the fact that he's not a very good defender, doesn't space the floor, and isn't great around the rim. So to me, it doesn't make a tons of sense. Like he would definitely be an upgrade, especially as a rebounder, and like he can attack bigs really well, and it's a nice wrinkle to have offensively in the playoffs. But he doesn't feel to me like a Toronto target just based on everything else I said. So I'd be surprised, but it could also just be a leverage play. Like here's the most obvious team lacking a center, we're trying to drive up the market for Drummond. Here's a rumor. Like that stuff happens a lot too. So yeah, those are my
So
thoughts.
my view, so I posted like a news type article, on the website, like, hey man, we're interested in Andre Drummond.
Yeah.
And for some reason, people thought like I was advocating for Andre Drummond. I guess I didn't word the thing properly. And I proposed a couple of trades. No, I absolutely do not think the Raptors, like he would really help the Raptors. Because if you saw the type of game we played today, like he would be lost in that pace. Like I don't think he's able to play in a game that we played today. I don't think he has the pace or the quickness or really like the intelligence to play that style of game. Also, not great culture. Like not a great, his effort has been shoddy as in parts of his career. Culturally, I mean, you've heard some bad things about him. He can't spread the floor. So what are you even doing here? I mean, you're really getting a guy because just he's a big guy with a bit of a reputation. I don't think he fits the Raptors at all. This certainly sounds like a move, like for the sake of a move. Oh, we need a big, let's get Drummond. He seems to be a name. I really hope the Raptors stay away from this one because this may end up actually hurting them way more than helping them.
Yeah, I will be disappointed if the Raptors trade Norman Powell for someone who's going to leave in a year and maybe doesn't fit your timeline that well. Like if you trade Norm, trade him for either like a pick or someone who you can build with down the road. And so that's why I think we're going along here, but I thought that the Collins rumor was pretty interesting out of Atlanta because there was a rumor that they're looking for a lottery pick for Collins. Didn't really specify like how good of a lottery pick. And like, is Norman Powell plus the 20th pick in the draft not the same value as a lottery pick? So I think that's a guy to watch out for if you're like a Raptors fan. I've seen Samson make the point that Collins at the 5 has not been a good player defensively, doesn't drive winning at the 5. But I would like to see if that holds true when OG and Siakam surround him at the 4 and the 3. Like the difference between who he's playing with in Atlanta versus the Raptors front court could be so significant that he could kind of do just fine. Because if Boucher is thriving at the 5 with the Raptors, who's to say John Collins can't? And offensively, it's obviously a great, great fit. So he's not perfect either, but if he would re-sign on a reasonable deal, I think he's a guy you definitely look at.
Much better trade because he also gives you a little bit more on offense. So which Drummond I don't think gives much at all. And going back to this trade, like I don't think I would even feel comfortable trading Boucher for Drummond, let alone Norm. Like that's
Yeah.
how low I think Drummond is on my trade target kind of list. Collins, I mean, who's seen Atlanta a lot? I think I've seen maybe 3 or 4 Atlanta games in total. And he's definitely a more suited offensive player for the Raptors. Like he'll rebound the ball. He'll be better on offense. Neither of these two are elite defenders, but they are an upgrade over what we have in paint defense based on what we currently have. So given the choice between the two, I'd go with Collins, and I'd even be willing to give up maybe one of one of our quote unquote prospects for Collins. But for Drummond, absolutely not, man. Stay away from that. That's like that. I think some dude in the comments section put it the best. That sounds like a freaking Brian Colangelo move. We don't want Brian
Yeah.
Colangelo moves.
Yeah, we don't want any moves that aren't going to move the needle enough to make them a championship contender if it's just for right now. I mean, doesn't make much sense. I think they're not an Andre Drummond away from being the championship team. So I think everyone would agree on that. So I don't think it makes much sense to give
As
away assets.
as our old friend, former RR writer William Liu would say, Andre Drummond is a relic of the past, which is what he used
Mm.
to call JV. And I think Andre Drummond kind of fits into that category.
And as Masai Ujiri said to JV, you're better than Drummond. Let's wrap it up there. Join us on Thursday, right after the second Milwaukee Bucks game, as we will be back with a live show right here on YouTube and Twitter. And thank you all for